today, all his learnings. And he's raised $1 billion 10 years ago. Yes, $1 billion. So talk to me about an entrepreneur who knows how to raise money. So, Bill Gross. Welcome, Bill. So glad you came here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for having me, Loic. It's an honor. It's so great to be in the midst of all this entrepreneurial energy. And I hope I can share some of my lessons from being an entrepreneur with all of you. My lessons as an entrepreneur began when I was quite young. When I was only 12 years old, I started my first business. It was doing candy arbitrage. Because in my neighborhood where I was growing up in Southern California, when a Snickers bar cost 10 cents, I found out that when you went to the drugstore, you could buy 3 for a quarter, or 8 1/3 cents. So I bought lots of candy for 8 1/3 cents and undercut the store by 1 penny and sold it for 9 cents at the school bus stop. This small little business actually took off like crazy. And I had a great desire to buy some tools, woodworking tools, and to build myself a pool table. I was able to make $400 from this candy business so I could buy those tools and the materials, and I built my pool table. It was very, very exciting for me. It gave me a great test of interacting with customers, learning about pricing. Eventually I was able to buy the candy in larger volume and get it down to 6.1 cents, and it grew the business quite a bit. But then when I graduated junior high school and went to high school, they had a machine shop. And that was really exciting to me because in Southern California in 1973, there was a big energy crisis all over the world, but in California in particular, you had to line up on odd and even number days to buy gasoline. You could only buy $5 at a time. And I remember reading about this in Popular Science and Scientific American about how there was some other hope to try and solve our energy problems, even back then in 1973. And I read about how solar energy could maybe do that. So I dropped out of English Lit and went into the metal shop and started pursuing that dream to make an engine that could turn solar energy into mechanical energy. And this was my first sketch of a little engine I wanted to make, and this is the actual reality of that Stirling engine. And I built this engine in class, and the other people in metal shop were a lot of motorcycle workers, a lot of drug dealers who thought I was making a bomb all the time. I kept on saying, no, I'm making a Stirling engine, but they didn't really believe me. But it turned out it ran. And I made plans for this, and I went back to Popular Science magazine and sold the plans and kits to make this engine. And I just went down to Kinko's. My little company was called Solar Devices. I went to the library and read everything I could about mail order, learning about how to test different kinds of mailings. I used to test different handwriting, calligraphy, typewriting, different color stamps to try and figure out higher conversion rates. And I sold my little plans for this parabolic concentrator and for the Stirling engine for $4. And I made the copies for 75 cents and sold for $4. Well, eventually I sold 10,000 of these plans for $4. And that actually helped pay my way through college. It might even had an impact on me getting into college because I wrote that down on my application. And what I learned from this, lesson number 1, was market power rules. There are so many things you can do when you start a business to try and make it successful. You can try and build company power. This is a great thesis by Jeffrey Moore, who wrote the book Crossing the Chasm. You can build company power, you can build category power, you can build execution power. But those are all things you have to build, and it usually takes a big company to make those happen. But market power is when a market is just taking off without you even doing anything about it. And that's what was happening to me at that time. Solar energy was taking off. There was a huge interest in the world about that. And I just chanced upon it because I was excited about it. But I learned this lesson very importantly, very early on. I was only 15 years old. That if you move into a market that already has that power going for it, it's like running a race with a draft at your back. So as an entrepreneur, if you can find a market that has that kind of dynamic going on, it's absolutely unbelievable. So market power rules. So after I got into Caltech, I started taking engineering classes, and I got really into acoustical engineering, and I used the anechoic chamber at Caltech to do some research, and I started designing some high-end loudspeakers. And I made this lead cylinder speaker shown on the right, and I got a patent on this design, and I started selling it to other students on campus, and other professors in the area, and to all of Pasadena, actually. And I opened up a stereo store, a high-end stereo store right on Colorado Boulevard in Pasadena, where in the basement we manufactured the speakers, and up on the ground floor we sold them at retail. And having that experience of demonstrating to customers and trying to convince customers to take out their wallet, part with their money, and buy a pair of loudspeakers or buy some audio equipment was the most unbelievable learning experience I ever had. And that leads to lesson number 2. Master the demo. Learning how to sell, how to pitch, how to demonstrate, how to close people is ridiculously valuable. Again, I learned this when I was only 19 years old, accidentally, but it was so valuable for every other business I ever started. And I really recommend not thinking about the demo as an afterthought, but learning how to master your demo is extremely, extremely important to whatever business you do. It's one of the most valuable entrepreneurial skills. So after I graduated from Caltech, I had my stereo store, and the IBM PC came out in 1981. I ran down to my computer land in Pasadena and bought one of those IBM PCs. It was $5,000 with 160K floppy drive, 256K of RAM, and visual, not even visual basic, basic and Pascal. And a little bit later, VisiCalc came out, and then Lotus 123 came out, and I started computerizing my business using Lotus 123. My brother joined me in the business as well, and we started working on a program, learning how to program in macros at first, and eventually learning how to program entirely. And we made this product on the left called CPA Plus. It was a product that would allow you to become an accountant, but just by building up all the chart of accounts in a spreadsheet for you with automated macros to take care of all your payables and payroll and so on. We began selling this program for $695. This is back when packaged software sold for a lot of money. And we started selling this in some of the retailers, Egghead Software and other retailers around Southern California. That began growing, and when talking to one of our customers on the phone, and hearing how inexperienced they were with Lotus 123, we realized there was an opportunity for a program that would make Lotus 123 even easier to use. And we called that program HAL, for Human Access Language. It was a natural language interface for 123. We began making that program. We went to the Comdex show and demonstrated it. Lotus saw us at that show, and in 1995, Lotus acquired the company for $10 million. So GNP Development, the company that was working on the software, which was upstairs from the stereo store, was acquired by Lotus. I moved back to Cambridge and began working for Lotus Development and software for 6.5 years. We subsequently came out with a product called Lotus Magellan, and I worked on a number of other products at Lotus and learned a whole bunch about the software industry. Over the course of creating this company and this successful first exit to Lotus Development, we had many ups and downs. We were scrapping for cash. We hadn't raised any money. And we had some very, very difficult times. But we were very, very excited about the business. And that leads to my next lesson. Pursue your passion. Work at something you absolutely are crazy about and love. Every business is going to face huge challenges along the way. Some of the businesses that we think are the greatest successes of all time face enormous challenges. Everybody knows about the story behind Apple. Not as many people know about the story behind Disney. Walt Disney was practically broke many times during his career. He was broke, and then he came out with Snow White, and that pulled the company out of bankruptcy. And then he was broke again, and he launched Disneyland, and that pulled the company out of bankruptcy. And the number of times that great leaders were right on the brink, but their passion kept them going forward, is innumerable. And I really recommend anything you do entrepreneurially, you have to absolutely love what you're doing to be able to make it through those tough times. So after I stayed at Lotus for 6.5 years, in 1991, 20 years ago, my youngest son turned 5 years old. And I waved goodbye to him on the kindergarten playground as he went off to school. And as I drove away, I was worried, maybe he won't fall in love with learning. I had a magical 4th grade teacher that made me fall in love with learning for the rest of my life. But what about if he didn't? And I thought, with new multimedia computers that are coming out, maybe I could make educational software that would make him fall in love with learning. And not only make him fall in love with learning, but help his friends fall in love with learning. So it would be cool to be, okay to be in love with learning, not just weird to be in love with learning like it was for me. So I started Knowledge Venture with the express intent of making products that would make kids fall in love with learning. This was our first product, and then we came out with a whole line of products. We worked with Isaac Asimov to make Space Adventure. We worked to make Science Adventure. We worked with Buzz Aldrin to make Space Adventure. We made a product called Dinosaur Adventure, Undersea Adventure, and we kept on spreading out to make different products to try and succeed in the marketplace. We kept trying more and more different things. And one Christmas, when we weren't quite making our numbers, to try and make our numbers, we instituted a program called Weekend Warriors. And this was the best thing the company had ever done, and you'll hear why. We had 65 people in the company at the time. We had raised money from Mayfield and from Moore David Al, and we had a difficult Christmas to try and pull off in 1993. So we took all 65 people in the company and assigned everybody to a different retail store in the Southern California area. I got the CompUSA in City of Industry, someone else got the Fry's in Woodland Hills, someone else got the Egghead in Santa Monica, and everybody on Saturday and Sunday went and bought a full box of donuts, went with their laptop, showed up at the store at 10 a.m. when they opened, bribed their way in to stand at the end of the software aisle and demonstrate our products all day long. Well, that radically boosted our sales, because if you had someone demoing our products at the end of the aisle, the sales would go up tremendously. And then that has a daisy chain effect, because then the store would order more products, which would give us more shelf space. But of course, it was only happening in 65 stores. We needed to make this happen nationwide. But it still had a great impact, and we made our Christmas numbers. But every Monday morning, when we got back from Weekend Warriors, we'd have an all-company meeting. And we talk about all the stories we had that happened over the weekend. And we had amazing stories, funny stories, sad stories, poignant stories. But the important story that we learned, which will lead to my next lesson, was this. You see that lady looking in the aisle, picking up a box, and then she would pick up our software box, turn it over, read the front and back, and then put it back down. There was no freemium model back then. This was packaged goods CD-ROM software. There was no way for people to try the product before they bought it. So many people would look at the box and couldn't figure out if it was for their child. So when we kept on hearing this over and over from the stories that came back from all the employees, we had this idea. What about if we made a product that was much, much narrower? We were making products all over the map, trying to cover every interest. What if we made something that was much narrower? We knew there were 4 million people who were 4 years old, 4 million people who were 5 years old, 4 million people who were 6 years old, and so on. Each age range in the United States has about 4 million children. What about if we made a product called Jumpstart Kindergarten that was just for 1 year? Rather than making a product that was good for 5 to 15 years old, we'd make a product for only 1 year. Well, that was the concept. We ran it through the company, and the sales force completely objected. They said there's no way we will convince a retailer to carry a product that is for such a niche market. They just won't give it shelf space. But we kept on arguing. We fought about this for about 3 months, but we finally prevailed and decided to at least do an experiment. We'll spend $200,000, we'll make a prototype of the product, and we'll see what happens. We made that prototype, we put it in the stores, and sales took off like crazy. It was absolutely unbelievable. People looked at the box, they said Jumpstart Kindergarten, they said, I have a 5-year-old, I need that product. And it was amazing how we started outpacing every other product on the shelves. We eventually, of course, made a whole series. We went kindergarten, first grade, second grade, all the way up through 6th grade. What we learned was we were making products all over the map, and the more we narrowed, the better we did. And that leads to my next lesson. Focus, focus, focus. Focus is always better, even if you pick the wrong focus. We were so worried we were going to pick the wrong focus. Turns out focus is even better, even if you pick the wrong focus. Doing fewer things extraordinarily well connects with the customer and is almost always better. Very important lesson, which I took to the later companies we started. So after that, Knowledge Venture was acquired in 1996 for $90 million, and I started Idea Lab with Marcia Goodstein and Tom Hughes as a technology incubator. This is back in 1996. Sort of before this was fashionable. In fact, a lot of people thought it was a crazy idea, but I knew I had to do this. We built a place where we could share resources for company creation and where we could take risks and nobody would get fired in case we failed. And that's a very important thing because everybody talks about risk-taking and failure, but people look at what's happening in a company. And if they see anybody punished or lose their job when they take a risk and it fails, everybody recognizes that and they won't do it. So we specifically created a structure where we could experiment on things. If it don't work out, people could just move to new projects. And that really encouraged the risk-taking, the exact kind of thing I was going for. Since 1996, we started more than 100 companies, and they've been across a wide spectrum with a wide range of successes. Out of the 100 companies, we've had more than 300 rounds of financing because on average each company has about 3 rounds of financing. So I've done 300 different rounds of financing. So we've sort of seen everything and worked with everybody. We've directly invested more than $870 million into the companies, but we've helped the companies raise a total of $2.8 million additional. We've had 35 successful IPOs and acquisitions. We have 25 current operating companies, and we've had 40 failures. So we've certainly had our fair share of failure. We've learned a lot from those. I'm going to share some lessons with you about those. But first, the lesson I learned in starting Idea Lab. Recognize your strengths. I am generally an unfocused individual. I like working on a lot of different things. I have a lot of different ideas. And yet I know that a company needs focus to be successful. So the whole idea of Idea Lab was to combine complementary strengths around my strengths. We brought in other people into Idea Lab that have the skills that I don't have. And we came up with a structure that allowed the companies to succeed by staying laser-like focused on their mission, but allow me to be involved in multiple companies and be relatively unfocused, which would be unsuccessful for an individual company. So of the 100 companies, I want to share with you some stories about 6 of them. 2 painful failures, 2 wild successes, and 2 works in progress, companies that we're building right now, and we'll see how they play out. One of the painful failures was a company called eToys. We started this company in 1997. This was before e-commerce had really spread very far. Amazon had only just started selling CDs. There were books at the beginning. They just began selling CDs. We weren't sure if toys would sell online. Of course, it's kind of obvious today that they would. But we began this company. We raised an initial $400,000 and an $875,000 pre-money just to get this company started. We spent $20,000 to buy the URL, and we got off to start for our first Christmas. We did about $1.5 million of revenue that first Christmas. We did about $10 million of revenue the next Christmas. We did $50 million revenue the third Christmas, and we went public after that. And at one point, the company, after it was public, had a market cap larger than Toys R Us, which was the biggest toy chain in all of the United States. The company had grown to wild, wild scale and was taking off like crazy. It used the money that it raised when it went public to scale like crazy, building for an enormous Christmas the following year. It built warehouses all around the country to be able to ship with one-day shipping in every region. It stocked up on toys for a blockbuster Christmas, and we had a blockbuster Christmas. We did $160 million in revenue that next year, so more than 3 times the previous year. But we had built for a $300 million Christmas. And because we stocked up on toys, because we built all those warehouses, and because the dot-com crash happened and the company couldn't raise any more money, because the company had always thought, well, we could just do a secondary anytime we want. But after the dot-com crash, there's no way you could do a secondary. So the company eventually failed due to overbuilding. And the lesson is, don't overbuild. The world can change very fast. We had no idea the dot-com crash could come on as fast as it did. It's better to grow slowly than to go out of business with overcapacity. Very painful lesson, but very valuable lesson. The next company, Z.com, we started in 1999. This was a company that was going to do online entertainment. We had done deals with Adam Sandler, with Chris Rock, and it was sort of a forerunner to like Funny or Die or other online entertainment and comedy sites of today. There was only about 10% broadband penetration at the time, but we were very excited that that was going to accelerate, so we weren't worried about that. We raised about $10 million. We began building out the site. We launched, and we had good traction. We hired about 110 people, producers in all areas. We're based in Los Angeles, so we had a studio in Hollywood, and we were working like crazy to build out this content. It was really growing nicely, but slowly, because broadband penetration was only going up a little bit in 2000, and then with the dot-com crash, slowed down a little bit. Eventually, the company cut back from 110 people painfully to 46 people. And then they cut back painfully the next year to 20 people. And they cut back painfully the next year to 12 people. And they eventually ran out of money. And it's such a shame because the company was so great and it was just a few years ahead of its time. If only we could have made it a little bit longer. And the lesson we learned from that company was survive until the market is ready. If you have a great offering, and we had a great offering, people loved it, but the market just isn't ready for it yet, immediately cut your burn to survive until the market is there. If we had only immediately cut our burn to 12 people, instead of going in slow steps to 46, to 20, and then down to 12, we would have survived. We would have been a great, great company, and we just weren't aggressive enough in listening to what the market was telling us about the growth rates and penetration of broadband. And then next, we started a company called Cars Direct in 1999. Again, I told you that people weren't really doing e-commerce that much. Back then, people were worried about putting credit cards online. And here I wanted to sell a car online. It was my own personal desire. I wanted to buy a car online without ever going to the dealer. I wanted to go online, configure my car, pay cash, and have the car show up on a flatbed truck at my house. But that's what I wanted. I didn't know if anybody else would want that. So we hired a founding executive to test that premise. And I told him, let's just spend 90 days and $50,000 and find out if people want to do that. This is like one of these internal Idea Lab tests. So we got this together, and after 30 days, he came back to me and said, well, I'm talking to Ford about getting a source of supply of cars, trying to scale up, get ready for that. I said, what are you talking to Ford for? We don't have to get a source supply of cars. We don't even know if we're going to do this. We're just trying to find out if people want to buy the cars online, if they'll go through with the transaction. And he said, okay, I won't worry about that. On the 60th day, he came back to me and said, well, I'm working on the configurator so people can configure the different options in their car. I said, we don't need to build a configurator. Just let people type in what they want. We're going to go buy the car at the Honda Auto Mall in Monrovia and deliver it to them on a flatbed truck. We're going to lose money on the car. Don't worry about the configurator yet. We might build that, but not yet. So on the 80th day, I said, just put the site live. And he finally put the site live on a Thursday, I remember. He turned it on Thursday night. I went home, and when I came in on Thursday morning, I asked him, how'd it go last night? And he said, we sold 4 cars last night. I said, hurry up and turn the site off. And we had learned that people would actually take out their wallet, spend $1,000, buy a car online, and then now we had to deliver those cars to those people, so we bought those 4 cars at retail and sold them at a loss. But now we had proven the thesis. So now we were going to build the whole site. And now we spent 6 months building out the whole company, and then we launched the company later. And great management came in, built up the company, scaled it in different directions, expanded to a much bigger mission. And the company went public in 2007 and was acquired by a private equity firm a year ago, a very profitable company. It was turned into internet brands. It was very, very successful. And the lesson I would say from that one is test, test, test. Find a way to test your core proposition with your customer and then manage your resources to adapt after that. Don't spend the money in advance, but you have to test a real customer proposition. You have to make the example be an actual real test. The next company, GoTo.com, we created in 1998, and I launched that company at the TED conference in 1998, February of 1998. And the reason we started GoTo was we had 20 other companies in our portfolio, and they all were trying to buy traffic. And back at this time in 1998, you really couldn't buy traffic to your site. The way you had to get traffic was either run banner ads or sign a $5 million multi-year exclusive portal deal with AOL or Netscape or Yahoo. And most of our companies couldn't afford that or didn't want to do that. But I asked all of our companies to convert all of their campaigns to their effective cost per click. They were doing CPM-based advertising. But I would always tell all of our CEOs, make sure you track that out in a spreadsheet to what you're paying on a per visitor basis. And then the idea came to us, if we want to try and make a better search engine, what about if we just charge on a cost per click basis? Rather than having people back that out, why don't we just have people go ahead and bid on that? And that was a very controversial idea at the time. When we launched that at that TED conference, there were actually people hissing in the audience when we introduced it. People did not like the idea. I remember the Wall Street Journal article came out panning us the first day, and Yahoo came out quoted in that article saying they would never ever do that in their search results. But we launched the company because we thought it was going to be a great thing. The revenues took off like crazy, the per click bid rates were going up, the traffic was going up. We eventually signed a carriage deal with AOL and renamed the company Overture as we started outsourcing and providing this as a service to other people. Then Microsoft signed up at MSN, and then in 2000, Yahoo signed up. They said they never would do this, but they signed up with us in 2000. And by 2001, it was 80% of Yahoo's revenues. So it grew to be a very, very important Yahoo's business. And then in 2003, Yahoo acquired the business for $1.6 billion. So they went in 5 years from we would never do that to we have to own it. And the lesson I would say from this company was stick with it. When you have a great idea, stick with it despite what the critics say. The critics were very against this idea, but we really knew we had something and we stuck with it, and I really recommend that's one of the most powerful entrepreneurial lessons. So 2 companies that we're working on right now that we'll still see what the outcome is. One is eSolar. This is a utility scale solar company trying to reduce the price of solar energy. I think solar energy is just a novelty unless it can beat the price of fossil fuels without subsidies. So we really have to drive the price down. And the method we're doing in this company is making a modular system that we can deploy on a field very quickly. This is what a power plant looks like that we built in Southern California. This is what it looks like from above. And this is what a big array might look like. And it's amazing how much you can scale this. Only 100 kilometers by 100 kilometers in northern Africa could power all of Europe. So you could take a reasonably small sized piece of land and power the entire Europe with that. So I have great hopes for this, but there's great, great challenges here. One of the things with this company is it has huge capital expense. And we had to raise more than $300 million for this company. And we had to get GE as a partner. GE invested and became a partner with this company to help us build out plants in Turkey, in India, in China, and southwestern United States. And the lesson I would say from this company is you have to find essential partners. If you have a world-changing idea with huge capital requirements, you've got to work hard to get the partners you need. We learned that painfully in this company, and I really recommend it. When you see your company needs the right partners, you have to stop and go get them before you continue. And then finally, Uber Media. This is a company I started almost exactly 2 years ago today. I got the idea for this. It was the Copenhagen conference going on. And I started tweeting about things that I thought were important in the energy space. And I put the hashtag Copenhagen in, and when I searched for my tweet, I saw it, and when I searched for it 10 seconds later, I saw, where do you find mittens in Copenhagen? And I was very frustrated by the fact that I had written this great blog post, and it just disappeared from the stream in 10 seconds over something which I thought wasn't as relevant as my post. And I really want to try and find a way to make this incredible democratizing power of social media, but make it more relevant and have it have better reach, more targeted reach, so I can get my thoughts to the person I wanted to. So we started Uber Media. We began building and acquiring a number of Twitter clients. We have Uber Social. We acquired Twidroid first. This has been a global effort because Twidroid, the 2 founders came from Vienna, and Uber Twitter came from the East Coast of the United States, and Echophone is in Palo Alto. And then we built our own platform, Chime In, where people can connect around their interests to try and have even greater connection, even greater relevance. And across all of these products, we now have 6 million users sending out more than 25 million posts a day. So 25 million times a day, people take out their device, mobile or desktop, and then say something in one of our products. And we're really, really excited to learn from those people and have those people spread the word for us. And the lesson I've learned from this company is you have to harness your users' passion. In the new world of media, you have to create automated ways for your customers to get you new customers. And that's unbelievably powerful, unbelievable capabilities now in this new world to be able to take advantage of that. The final lesson I would like to say, to wrap around all of these, is all truth passes through 3 stages. First, it's ridiculed. Second, it's violently opposed. Third, it's accepted as being self-evident. We love this quote so much, we have it on the wall of our building inside our offices. And when you think about it, a breakthrough idea is a crazy idea right until it crosses over to be a great breakthrough. So you have to really have you have to be willing to face some ridicule and some opposition before you make your idea become self-evident. And I really urge you to try and stick with your passion and stick with that saying in any of the efforts that you undertake. I want to thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much for the great audience.
Wow, looks like I liked it. Bill, that was incredible. Thank you.